us. This is a new feature we have. We're going to bring Andrew Bone on the show and take your calls recruiting wise. But I also want to know where we're coming at from a technical standpoint as we begin. So if the audio isn't coming clear on Bone's end, just let us know in the comment box and I will fix the audio issues as we go forward. And this is, we're still kind of in the beta. We want to bring you the best product. With that said, what's up, Andrew? How you been, man?
Hey Kyle, how's it going? It seems like both of us have been pretty busy lately.
Oh yeah, it's good to be back. I mean, I was on the road for almost 30 days, and I know it's your time to shine now. With signing day coming up here, the first Wednesday in February, and there's a lot to discuss, especially with these new coaching changes. I mean, it's been nonstop here at BamaInsider.com. Thank you to our subscribers and to our YouTube subscribers. I think a good place that I wanted to start off with today was asking you about Chris Bogle and kind of what's the latest on him. I know Alabama was set to visit with him today on the 21st. So where do things stand with Chris Bogle, and how big is Tosh Lupoi going to play into this as we get down to the stretch?
Well, as we know, Chris Bogle was one of Alabama's commitments in the January 5th All-American Bowl out in San Antonio, choosing Alabama over Miami and Tennessee. So you can certainly expect that Miami and Tennessee reached out to him immediately when Tosh Lupoi left and went to the Browns. I mean, defense coordinator, position coach. Obviously, that's going to kind of open up the door a little bit more, so to say, for these other schools to get in there, especially with a kid who did not sign with Alabama in December. He waited and he's supposed to sign in February. So what's going to happen here? Miami, Florida, Tennessee, all still heavily recruiting him. He was out at the Polynesian Bowl this past week out in Hawaii, so Alabama did not visit him out there, but first visit with him being home. And there may have been some other coaches that have stopped in today, but Joe Panunzio, Sal Sinceri, both expected to visit with him today. So that's going to be a big visit for him to, visit with those guys, kind of find out what's going on, the direction Alabama's going in. But I think two of the biggest things for Alabama here with Chris Bogle is, getting Sal Sinceri and Charles Kelly on board. That's huge because those are two guys who recruited him. Sal Sinceri recruited him for Florida, and Charles Kelly recruited him for Tennessee. So having both those guys now in Tuscaloosa, I think it's huge for Alabama in that regard with Chris Bogle. Joe Panunzio, been recruiting him pretty much since his freshman year in high school, so he has that familiarity. He knows what the Alabama program's all about. But will this stop other schools from recruiting him? No. I mean, Miami's still going to come, full head of steam after him until National Signing Day, and he's got some decisions to make. But Alabama making him a priority, making sure that they go and see him as one of their first stops. I think that's huge because that just shows that Alabama definitely wants him in this class. They're making sure he feels like a priority. They're going down there to answer any questions he may have. Now he's already taken his official visits, so no more visits for him this month. So it's not like he's going over to Miami or up to Tennessee or back to Alabama. So everybody's just going to have to depend on these in-home visits these next 2 weeks, and Alabama will hope to know one way or the other, at least feel good. A couple days before signing day, rather than just waking up on Wednesday morning not having a clue, like we've kind of seen over the last couple of years. We saw that last year. Alabama felt good about some guys, and then those guys end up going elsewhere. Bobby Brown to A&M. Vernon Jackson, another kid who ended up going to Texas A&M last year. Justin Ross, who signed with Clemson, even though Alabama doesn't feel good about certain kids unless they, I would say if they feel very good about somebody, it means that a kid has told them, Coach, I'm coming. Nothing to worry about. Like, this is where I'm coming. And I think Alabama got burned a little bit last year on that. Just kind of, because I think there were some kids that last year told the coaches what they wanted to hear, and not just Alabama. I think some of the kids may have told multiple coaching staffs, and I don't really want to single people out, but Alabama felt good about 3 or 4 kids last year that ended up going elsewhere. I mean, very, very good, and that's not necessarily the case. I mean, they play a little bit more pessimistic than most staffs, but when they feel really good about somebody, then that pretty much means the kid has committed to them and they're going in and out for them. And then sometimes it just doesn't happen. And it seemed like it happened more last year than it has this year, but it does tend to happen from year to year.
We're here with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. My name is Kyle Henderson. Thanks for the comments in the comment box regarding where we need to be audio wise. I know there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, so I want to make sure that Andrew is properly positioned in a good light. I want to provide a good show. So as we move forward, hopefully we don't have to continue to ask, but it's important because we want to develop a good product. Today is January 21st, coming to you from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, talking recruiting and Bone as we continue with our program and signing day just a couple weeks away. Where do things stand with a prospect like Henry To'oTo'o? I mean, a lot of people continue to ask about Henry. It's on the message boards constantly. Can you provide the latest update?
Yeah, well, I think with with him playing in the Polynesian Bowl this past, or not playing but participating in all the events, didn't actually play in the game, but he was out there, and he's been one of those kids that has really hasn't given too much away. I mean, he pretty much says the schools that he's going to visit, all the schools are still in it, and doesn't really say this school is my overall favorite or anything like that. Now, he did take an official visit on January the 11th to Tennessee. He is scheduled to come into Alabama this weekend, and then make a decision probably a little bit closer or on National Signing Day. What's going to happen with him now that Tosh Lupoi is gone, because that was the defense coordinator at Alabama. That was his area recruiter. That was a guy that is from De La Salle High School, Henry To'oTo'o's high school. So, a lot of people looked at that and said, okay, well, since Tosh is gone, Alabama's eliminated. Not necessarily the case. I mean, because if Alabama was eliminated, he wouldn't take his official visit to Alabama this weekend. Pete Golding is his area recruiter, but it's also his position coach. It's the coach that he would be, working under at Alabama regardless. And this was going to be regardless anyway. I mean, Pete Golding was the co-defense coordinator at Alabama, working with Tosh this past season. So Henry To'oTo'o was always going to be working with Pete Golding if Pete Golding was going to stay on board. And you get a guy like Charles Kelly on board, even though he didn't necessarily recruit Henry To'oTo'o for Tennessee. There's a little bit of familiarity there. He knows him and has seen him a couple times. So Charles, when he visits this weekend, he's going to be spending time with those guys. And I definitely still think Alabama's very much involved, or very much in the picture, high on his list. We'll know a lot more after this weekend. If he feels very comfortable at Alabama, I still think Alabama's got a great chance to sign him. Now, I think they're going to end up with one linebacker. And there's two guys that they're heavily recruiting, and Henry To'oTo'o is one of them. The other guy is Daniel Himula, four-star linebacker out of California. And I keep seeing these different reports that if Alabama doesn't end up getting Henry To'oTo'o, then they're going to fall back and be very happy with getting Daniel Himula. I'm not 100% sure if I'm even saying that right, but Daniel Himula out of California, going to visit Alabama on February the 1st. And yeah, Alabama's been involved for a very long time. They've been heavily recruiting him, but he's not a fallback option for a lot of schools. And will Alabama possibly take both of them? There's a possibility there. I think they really like him a lot. They're heavily recruiting him. He's going, like I said, he's going to visit on February the 1st. And there's a lot of other programs that consider him a top priority. Washington, Oregon. I think a lot of people think outside of Alabama, I think a lot of people think that Washington's probably the favorite for him. But let's see. Let's wait and see what happens when he comes on that official visit here in a few weeks. See how he connects with the coaching staff, connects with the campus, connects with other players who are already there. Guys, it's also big this month, which I think a lot of people fail to realize. When these official visitors come on campus, and they're going to be there this weekend, they're going to be there next weekend. Sure, they're going to be able to spend time with players, but they're going to be able to spend time with guys that are in their recruiting class that are already on campus. I mean, we know all these kids that have already signed with Alabama, but there's a lot of those guys that are already in Tuscaloosa, like Pierce Quick and Evan Neal and those type of guys. So they're going to be able to explain to them, this is what it's like as a freshman. As soon as you enter Alabama, this is what we're going through right now. and they're going to be able to talk to them about it and kind of show them the ropes a little bit. So, there's sometimes kids get to Alabama on official visits, and they may be a big time prospect, a heavily recruited guy, a guy that everyone thinks that is a must get, a number one priority type guy. Then they get to campus and they don't, things don't mesh. And I'm not saying things aren't going to mesh with these guys. I'm just saying that there's sometimes after official visit weekends, all right, we need to take a step back from recruiting this guy because he just doesn't fit in with our program. And, some people look, we've said this about some kids in the past, and people look at it, oh, it must mean that Alabama doesn't feel good about their chances. Not necessarily. I mean, there's some cases where that's true, but there's also a lot of cases where, Alabama players, meet with these guys. They're official visit hosts for a reason. They want them to have a good time and show them, the nightlife and stuff like that. But coaches also want to get feedback from, the players that are hosting them. What'd you think about this kid? Does he fit our program? Does he have his head on straight? And stuff like that. And, I think that, we see that a lot of times where coaches back off from recruiting kids after official visit weekends.
We're here with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. My name is Kyle Henderson. Andrew, as there's been so much news here at Alabama with the new coaches and coaches exiting the program and coaches now filtering into the program. Two new names to add, Charles Huff, who is Mississippi State's run game coordinator as well as the running backs coach. Looks like he'll take over the running backs. Very good recruiter. If you look to his bio, he's actually done some incredible things in the Maryland area, which I found interesting. Alabama adding Huff after Loxley leaves to be the head coach over there. Thought that was important. Also, Charles Kelly, who I know, has been recruiting some key targets for Alabama. And then you also have Kyle Flood, who is a former coach at Rutgers. Can you kind of just hit on some of these new coaches? And I know it's early, but from a recruiting standpoint, how do you see it impacting Alabama from a positive standpoint?
Well, I think that the guys that they're recruiting, the guys that they've hired, I think they've hired them for many reasons. And a lot of people just think Alabama just decides to, let's say after the season when coaches leave, all right, let's start looking around and see what coaches are available, which coaches we can get. Let me tell you something. They've had a list of guys that they would go after for a long time. It may have been years. They've had a list of guys that they would go after in case somebody left at that position. So they knew who they were going to go after. And Charles Huff, definitely a well-established, well-known recruiter, as you mentioned, in the DMV area, an area that was just dominated the last few years by Mike Loxley, recruiting for Alabama. Josh Gaddis recruited that area a little bit as well. So I think he could come in and do a tremendous job. And I thought originally when Salson Siri was hired, Salson Siri was the lead recruiter in the Maryland, Virginia, D.C. area for Alabama when he was in Tuscaloosa in his last stint. And now, I was thinking, all right, well, he's gonna get that area back, and nothing's really gonna change. But now you get Charles Huff on board. It probably makes it a little bit more difficult, to try to decide. But I think Charles Huff will probably end up being that guy in that area. Salson Siri, Charles Kelly, very well established recruiters nationwide. I mean, those guys are rock stars on the recruiting trail. Charles Kelly especially just does an unbelievable job. Has been known to get several 5-stars throughout the years. I mean, did such a great job down at Florida State, and I think that's why he was he was certainly a welcomed addition at Tennessee when they were able to hire him, because he did a great job recruiting in Knoxville as well. And now you get all those guys on board. You get Kyle Flood, who's got a lot of connections also in the Northeast. An area that Josh Gaddis recruited. New York, New Jersey area. I think we'll probably see Kyle Flood probably take that area and kind of run with it.
We're here with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. You can also post your comments in the comment box, and we'll get to you as soon as we can. Bone, I was reading through the Alabama recruiting board, the message board that you manage, and you mentioned something about Alabama potentially taking another running back. You got Trey Sanders coming in, you got Najee Harris returning, you got Brian Robinson and Jerome Ford. Do you still feel strongly that Alabama adds another running back to this class?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about it. With DeAndre Glass announcing last week to Oklahoma State, it just kind of signified that Alabama feels really good about where things are with Keelan Robinson. And I know that different people are trying to, say that maybe he secretly signed, maybe he didn't. He says that he didn't, but did he? Did he really? He's not taking. He doesn't seem like he's taking any visits. Which probably indicates something. But we're just going to kind of let that play out, and if something changes, then so be it. I think, let's just say hypothetically, he did not sign with Alabama in December and ends up flipping somewhere else or deciding to reopen his recruitment. I think Alabama would revisit DeAndre Glass, and I think DeAndre Glass would probably flip to Alabama. I think Alabama was his favorite. I think that's where he wanted to commit to, but because there wasn't a spot open, he committed to Oklahoma State, which is, a safe bet for him. I mean, go ahead and get on board somewhere. But if something opens up, hey, you can rethink it and possibly flip. But I think as of right now, Keelan Robinson's probably the guy. Whether or not he signed with Alabama or just going to sign in February, I think he ends up sticking, and that's probably going to be it.
Continue our recruiting show with Andrew Bone. Andrew Bone, he's just featured on the screen right now. We're kind of playing with different screen ratios, so I'm trying to make the show good for you guys. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. Bone, as we kind of inch closer to the end of the program, you might have mentioned it in the beginning of the show, but can you touch one more time on Nathan Pickering and kind of give us the latest on his recruitment, and is there a possible chance that Alabama can flip him from Mississippi State?
Yeah, I'll touch on Pickering and kind of update everyone on where things stand on the defensive line overall. Nathan Pickering was going to visit Alabama last weekend. Ended up canceling that visit and going to visit Alabama going to visit Alabama next weekend on February the 1st. So Alabama's going to get that last official visit with him, which I think is, obviously huge. We'll have to wait and see what happens. I just don't, know exactly what he's going to end up doing, because he's always said Alabama, if one school was able to flip him, it was going to be Alabama. The fact he's going to be making that final trip to Tuscaloosa, I think that, puts Alabama in a position to flip him. But with all the coaching changes, and he had such a great relationship with Tosh Lapoy, could that affect him? He's got some guys that he knows that are coming in. Charles Huff, a guy that he knows from Mississippi State. Sal Sinceri, Florida did a really good job recruiting him, so he knows Coach Sinceri pretty well. So we'll see what happens. Once he gets on campus, kind of gets familiar with all the coaches again, and sees everyone. Now Alabama's been visiting with him. Pete Golding's been doing a good job recruiting him. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But Alabama wants to sign 2 more defensive linemen in this recruiting class. And someone asked me on the message board, does that include Chris Bogle? No, Chris Bogle's an edge rusher. He's an outside linebacker edge rusher. So whenever we're saying Alabama wants 2 more defensive linemen, we're not talking about him, or we're not including him in that list. The guys that we're talking about is Nathan Pickering. We're talking about Byron Young, who's committed to Alabama, but still taking some visits, with Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU, all in the mix there. I think Byron Young ends up sticking with Alabama in the end, but you always have to prepare yourself for the possibility that may not happen. Mel Sopsher, still very much in the mix for Alabama. Now, there's a chance that Sopsher, will visit Alabama, possibly during a February the 1st weekend, or possibly during a midweek earlier that week. So I don't think a decision's been finalized just yet, so we'll wait and see what happens with him. Alabama's still very much involved with Jaquez Sorrells, who's a 4-star linebacker out of Largo High School in Florida. And they're going to have Jared Hunt out of New York visit this weekend, tentatively set for this weekend. I think there's still a chance that he could end up maybe not visiting, but as of right now, still coming in this weekend. And then let's see who else. Quayshawn Fuller, who's a Florida State commitment, scheduled to visit on February the 1st. So there's still 4, 5, 6 defensive linemen that are out there, which includes Byron Young, who's committed. If Alabama can get 2 of those guys overall, on board, I think they're really happy come signing day.
Hey, Bone. I know you got to break out here in a minute. You mind if we take one or two recruiting calls before we close up the show?
Please,
All right.
please.
So everyone, the line is open 205 686 3604. You can call in right now and get your recruiting question. We'll probably only take two calls because you got to break out. But if you have a recruiting call, call in. The line should be open 205 686 3604. And be happy to take your call on BamaInsider.com. Let me know in the comment box too if the line is plugged up, and make sure to keep that open. Andrew, as we continue to move towards a break, who are some key visitors that you expect to be in Tuscaloosa this weekend?
Well, I think so. A name that a lot of people are starting to learn about the last couple of weeks is Brett Seether. He's a 3-star tight end out of Clearwater High School down in Florida that has really started to emerge after his senior season. And I saw somebody say something about shake my head. We're offering 3 stars tight end. Recruiting must be going terribly right now. Well, Georgia's offered them. I think Florida's about to offer him. Penn State's offered him. So a lot of schools have offered him late. Eddie Jackson was a kid that they offered in January after his senior year, and that turned out pretty well. First team All-Pro this year for Eddie Jackson. An All-American, Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs didn't get offered until the day before National Signing Day. I think that worked out quite well for the Crimson Tide. Didn't we just see a thing the other day where he was projected as the number 5 draft pick? So you just never know. And I think Alabama would not offer somebody this late, especially with the overall numbers. You look at Alabama signed 24 guys. They've got a lot of guys that they're still recruiting. So if they, they're not just making these random offers trying to fill the overall class. They like this kid a lot. And with Irv Smith leaving to go early to the NFL draft, I think that certainly opened up a spot for him. And, they would like to get him on board. If they miss on him, they probably just wouldn't take another tight end. They already have Jaleel Billingsley in the class, but he's certainly a guy, Brett Seether, guy that they've started really picking up steam on. Nick Saban's going to have an in-home visit with him tomorrow night with Jeff Banks. So, really watch out for his visit coming up this weekend. A couple other visitors that are coming in. As I mentioned, Jared Hunt out of New York, supposed to come in this weekend for an official visit. Christian Williams, Alabama's commitment. A lot of people keeping an eye on that one to see what ends up happening with him. Alabama signed 5 defensive backs in December. So will Alabama end up taking another defensive back? Will they sign another one? We'll just have to wait and see. He visited Miami this past weekend. It looks like he's probably going to go to Oregon for an official visit. LSU still also in the mix. So I think a lot of people are watching that. And another big thing that's happening this weekend is going to be the first one of 2019 for the 2020 class, Junior Day. So Alabama's going to have their first Junior Day of the year